Hey guys, so Kalendros here. This is going to be the first song review that I'm going to do for the channel. I had done the introduction video a while back and really had talked about doing some of these songs and stuff, and unfortunately got really kind of busy with work and stuff like that, and that really pretty much ended today for the most part. So, with having some more time to go back and actually do some of this stuff, I'm probably going to shoot several videos. This one will be the first. I thought it appropriate to start with the band that that I really feel was however you want to say it, because we're not 100% sure really if they're going to return or not, and what form that will be when they do return. But this song, this band, I think is one of the more unique bands that's really out there right now. I mean, and I'd say that in the sense of their material is out there and they're relatively current. Um, so that is Vektor. So I've got the rocking the Vektor shirt. Um, but we're going to do actually a song off of Outer Isolation because um, I I debated very heavily doing um, a song off of Terminal Redux, which is my favorite album from Vektor, or Force of Legend, which is my favorite Vektor song, or even Black Future, which is another song I really like off of the Black Future album. But in the end, I wanted to take a deeper look at this song because when I first heard about Vektor as a band, um, the song that we're going to watch right now was the song that people said, "Oh, you got to hear this song." This band is crazy. Because I mean, most people that know me know that I love thrash. Um, so this was the one that people had really recommended to me first, and I think it's the song that most people really, when Vektor gets brought up 90% of the time in YouTube comments, this is the song that's recommended, and I don't necessarily agree with that, and I think, but that's common for a lot of bands. I think people will request a song because it's the most well-known song of the band, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best representation for the band. Um, that being said, I think this song is really, really, really good. There's a couple of reasons why I don't think it's the best representation for the band, but it really has nothing to do with the song quality. We'll get into those reasons. Um, I may kind of shout them out during the song as they occur, because it's specific points in the song, and I think you'll understand a little bit more of what I'm talking about when we get through them. Um, so it's mainly that it's such a, if you've never heard a band like say Voivod before, I don't even know if I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not 100% positive. I'll be honest, I know of Voivod and have heard a lot of Voivod songs, but I'm not like a tremendous fan of Voivod. Um, I kind of view Vektor as like almost the evolution of Voivod's concept of music, and which which is really a way of saying that they don't really sound that much like Voivod. They do in parts, but um, the inspiration was clearly there. And if you listen to interviews with David DeSanto, obviously Voivod was a big influence. And I mean, I think it's very apparent. The space theme that runs throughout all their stuff is, I think, the clearest influence from Voivod. But there's a lot of other themes as well. The way that they use spatial effects, and this song has some of that. And just the general, I don't want to say avant-garde, because avant-garde is almost like a dirty word in a way, because it implies that a song is not like, or a band is not cohesive enough. But that's definitely not the case with Vektor. It's that they're willing to try these challenging ideas, and I think Voivod was one of the bands that I think most people will agree really took a lot of risks in their music. Not 100% all of them paid off for sure, at least not for me anyways. But I understood when, as I was listening to them, that they were really pushing the envelope, and I think in a similar way, especially with Terminal Redux, Vektor was pushing the envelope in terms of what was acceptable in thrash, particularly in thrash, because they're still considered a thrash band. And I mean, I wouldn't really argue with that point. I mean, they're definitely a thrash band. I would though argue that they can't be just a thrash band, because there's a lot of other elements to their music to greater and lesser degrees, and as this song goes through, I'll also point out some of those influences, both musically, vocally, and stylistically, as they kind of happen. So as I said in my introduction video, my approach is a little different, I think, to most other YouTubers that are doing reaction videos, because my focus, I intend to be more on from a compositional musical standpoint, as opposed to like, a lyrical approach, or more of a general all-purpose approach where you're, kind of laying it out for people who are new to the musical style. So this song that we're going to listen to, you may have already guessed, is Tetrastructural Minds, which is, as I said, it's the song I think most people really associate with Vektor, even if they don't really know the band that well. It's the one that gets brought up, and I think part of that is because it's one of the few Vektor songs that's under like 8 minutes, which, I mean, I don't think that's the only reason this song, but I think it's one of the main reasons, because when you look at Outer Isolation as an album, most of the songs on Outer Isolation are over 6.5 minutes. So it's Vektor is really known for long, complex, and challenging song material. So this song has that, but manages to kind of compress it into a relatively short time frame, which is quite an achievement, I would say. So we're going to kind of dive into this one, and just kind of see how it goes. I probably will talk a little bit during this song to shout some stuff out, but not too much. And this is sort of a test run too. Don't know how the mixing is going to go on this, because this is my first attempt at doing this. I did this the first time, and I did it with headphones on, and I didn't like it. I didn't like, because I love headphones. Don't get me wrong, okay. But for me, I prefer listening to music with my system. I have a relatively good setup here with two half tower, not like, well, I don't know, they're bigger bookshelves, really, not half towers. Bigger bookshelves running through a really good Cambridge Audio DAC, digital analog converter, and everything sounds great. I am an audiophile. I used to sell audio, so for me, audio is like supremely important. And I had a really good pair of headphones that I think achieved that same level, but they kind of stopped working. So I haven't really had, and don't have the money to spend on a really good pair of headphones, at least not currently. If I can find a really good deal on a pair of Sennheisers or something, that's probably what I'll go for. But for right now, it's I'm really happy with listening to what I have, which is these two speakers, and I have a subwoofer that is hooked up not hooked up, but not hooked up, which is kind of funny, and is it's down here, kind of by my feet near where my computer is, but it's not plugged in because the DAC doesn't really support it. I mean, you can do it as a line out, but it doesn't filter subsonic frequencies. So what it's doing is it's just basically putting all the music through it. I can set the frequency on the subwoofer low, relatively low, and it does a half decent job, but it's not a really amazing subwoofer. It's, one of my extras that I had sitting around, and so even if I set it to a lower frequency, it still kind of sounds like music is playing through it, as opposed to just the bass frequencies. So that it doesn't really work all that well. So I right now I just have the two speakers hooked up, and but it's works really well. So that's the way we're going to listen to it. But as a consequence, the music balance versus my voice, I don't know how well it's going to go through. We'll just kind of go through. This video will serve as sort of a document as to how to iterate change on the stream going forward. I say stream, but I mean channel, actually. You can tell I come from a streaming background. So we'll see how that goes. This is Tetrastructural Minds. I will be doing a lyric breakdown for this, though. At the end, I will go through this song lyrically and kind of just take a quick. It's not my forte. If you want lyrical breakdowns of a song, I recommend, obviously, Vin and Sori do the best lyrical breakdowns, I think, on any out of any channel on YouTube that I've ever seen. But there's some other good channels out there for lyrical breakdowns too. The guys from Las Vegas get into it to some degree, but they keep their videos fairly short. Underground Metal Elitist goes into stuff as well, lyrically. But again, he keeps stuff relatively short. So if you really want an in-depth analysis of a song, like if you hear a song and you're like, wow, this song is awesome, I would love to get more in depth, with the lyrics on it, then I would say, if by some chance it's a song that Vin and Sori has reviewed, that is probably what I would recommend you check out. Anyways, let's kind of get into this song and see what we have. I haven't listened to this song in a little while. Outer Isolation is not my favorite album from them. In fact, it's my least favorite album from them. Terminal Redux, Black Future, this album, which is not to say that I don't like this album. I actually love every Vektor album. It's just that this is my least favorite of the three, and there's a couple reasons why. I'll get into those because they actually tie into some of the reasons why I feel like this is not the best first representation for the band. This is about 5.5 minutes long. Not a super long song. We'll go ahead and see what we got. So some very typical stuff here. Black metal riffs mixed with thrash, which is typical for Vektor. But it's very, very, very fast. So that scream is sort of the reason why I was saying this is not really a good newbie song. His vocals will take some getting used to. he was a big fan of Tom Araya, and you heard it in that scream. A very much early Slayer, scream. So pretty crazy stuff, honestly. What he was doing early on. Dial it down on Tremolo Redux. There really isn't a whole lot of those high screams. I love this part. And that is one thing Vektor does better than almost any other band out there. Those grooves are so tight. Very black metal right there. Really, really crazy solo too. I think that change is a little abrupt for somebody who's new to this style of music, and for Vektor even, that change is a little abrupt. But this part is so good though. But this part right here, this part is so brilliant. This shows how good they are at transitioning from one killer riff into another, taking this sort of like semi-acoustic picking pattern, and bringing it back to that groove from earlier. Yeah, so a couple things about that one, and the reasons, in case my voice got swallowed up by the song, which is very possible. A couple things with that song of why I feel like it's not necessarily the best representation early on. There's some very heavy black metal, like trills, tremolo picking and stuff used throughout that song. Vektor does that a lot with a lot of their songs, but this one has a lot, I would say more of it than some of their other ones, although less than some others. But this one, also this song is really, really, really fast. And I feel like even people who are thrash metal fans are going to be like, holy shit, this is fast, because it's really, really The BPM on the song, I was looking at the tab for it yesterday. I think it's like I really want to say it's over 200. It's insane. It's really ridiculous. And then the other thing, the high screams, because I think his voice is a little difficult to get into. To me, it always reminded me a lot, and because I love his voice, so to me that never bothered me. It reminds me a ton of Chuck Schuldiner from his later era Death albums, actually specifically Sound of Perseverance. Not really so much before that. I guess a little bit maybe of like Human and stuff in there, but it's mostly Sound of Perseverance era Chuck's vocals. Very, very, and David again was very, upfront with saying that was one of his influences, vocally and in terms of his lead playing, because the crazy thing about David DeSanto is if you go back and you look, there's before Black Future came out, there was a demo, and it has 6 songs, some of which were actually on this record, on Outer Isolation, their second record. Some of those songs were on this demo, sounding almost the same, and though that demo was him on guitar, vocals, and bass. The only other person on that album was a drummer. And all the lyrics and story were written by him. It's insane to me. There are other bands where actually Winter Sun is another example of where you have a guy who is just such a creative genius, that he's able to do all this stuff. But I mean, I think that's just an insane, incredible gift that people are able to to write to that level, and to play to that level, and stuff. It's crazy. So he took a lot of those influences, and I feel like, but also blended some really traditional thrash elements. Like I said, those high screams, that's Tom Araya from Slayer era, like early on, like before Rain and Blood, Show No Mercy, like. Basically, those really high screams. He did some of those in Rain and Blood and a little bit in later albums, but eventually phased them out entirely, which probably because he couldn't really do them anymore. But, like if you listen to, like Face the Slayer, what was the name of the song? Face the Slayer was a song. There's a couple of other ones off of there, but that have those ultra high screams. That just was something that he did, and I guess David DeSanto said in interviews that he just loved that shit. So that was a lot of what went into. They're mainly emphasis points at the end of vocal phrases. He's got 3, I think, really high notes in this song. But I think for somebody who's never heard Vektor before, the combination of the extreme speed, black metal elements, and the ultra high screams is a little bit difficult to digest, I think, for the new listener, because this is a very challenging band. I mean, even if you give somebody a more palatable song like Recharging the Void or Force of Legend or like LCD or Pteropticon, those songs, or Black Future, those songs are more recognizably thrash or more recognizably something, but they're still challenging, and that's the thing. Especially Force of Legend and Recharging the Void, because both of those songs are very progressive, whereas Black Future, LCD, Pteropticon are more straightforward thrashers. When you look at the crazy progressive elements that went into that song, and you heard a little bit of that in this song as well, and that's one of the reasons why I think this song is one that people like a lot, because unlike their straight ahead thrashers like LCD and Pteropticon, Pillars of Sand, there's not they don't have those ultra progressive sections. Now there's a lot of Vektor songs that have those. To greater degrees, or lesser degrees. But this one has a very small section in the middle. And one of the things that if I had one criticism about this song, it goes from, 250 miles an hour to like 100 miles an hour, very, very, very abruptly, when it transitions into that sort of spacey picking pattern that he does before bringing back that really awesome groove. And this is all coming out of that solo, because the solo is actually going on underneath that transition. And I think he did. I'm assuming that David actually wrote that solo, because I think he wrote the majority of their solos, except on the most recent album. Eric Nelson wrote a lot of the solos. In fact, there's a video on YouTube that's really cool of him doing the solo for Recharging the Void, which is a really neat listen. And that was him basically coming up with what actually ended up being the solo for the most part of that song, which is pretty neat. But I I kind of felt like when I was listening to this song, it has that thrash speed flow, with some of the black metal elements, and stuff that I kind of associate with other black and thrash bands, like Black Fast or Skeleton Witch, and then they went like just totally changed gears into this. I don't know. It's in a way, I guess you could say it kind of is a little bit reminiscent of like some of the more atmospheric black metal, or like because it's very dissonant, and that is really, I'll talk about that in a second about the dissonance of their general sound, but I think they really like to use picking patterns, because Forests of Legend has picking patterns all over that song. There's stuff all over the place in there. Some entirely acoustic, some slightly electrified like you had here, some with distortion. And this one was a little bit like almost jazzy in a way, but again very dissonant, because it had that signature element that really sets Vektor apart when it comes to their sonic palette, and that is the F tuning. So Vektor, when you look at the majority of metal bands that are out there right now, like I would say a good 70 or 80% of metal bands are, downtune, downtuning, or at the very least, E flat is like a very, very popular tuning for metal. Iced Earth does most of their, not all, but a lot of their songs, the majority of them are E flat. And, I think it's common, especially I find in power metal, it's very common. In some of the European metal, you see more use of stuff like C standard, and some more unusual tunings. But over here in America, you see a lot more like D drop C, or like B standard, and and shit like that, and that's fine. I mean, because you can take a song that's played in D drop C or whatever. Conquering Dystopia had several songs that were like in D drop C, or stuff like that, and it's, you can have a song like that and it can be progressive and have all kinds of interesting elements, but they do it in order to achieve a certain level of baseline heaviness, right? When you look at the F tuning, you are tuning up, which is almost never done. I don't know of any other band that plays an F standard. And all Vektor songs are in F standard, as far as I know. I have yet to come across one that is not. I don't have tabs for all their songs, though, so there's a very real possibility that there could be some out there. But The songs that I know of are all in F standard. This one certainly is an F standard. And what that causes is a very, very real dissonance in their general playing. In every song there's a slight dissonance, and there's people think that is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Dissonance is not in and of itself unmelodic. It just means that you have things that are contrasting. And what you often find, I think, especially in a part like that, where you went from this slower section, gradually building it up to that riff, and then eventually moving into that ultra fast section where he's going back and forth before coming back to the chorus. That build up and going into that super fast section is really served by playing in a tuning like F, where you have a natural dissonance, and I think that works really well for Vektor's overall sound, and I think is one of the reasons why they have such a unique sound to like most of their playing. I find that their leads are very clean, and they tend to really I don't want to say piercing, because again that sounds bad, but they tend to cut through the mix, and I think that's part of it is because of the tuning, and so because obviously you're tuned higher, so it makes for a lot of really interesting sonic possibilities, and in general, altering your tuning as a musician can really open up lots of possibilities. And one of the things that I found was really interesting, because I mentioned Iced Earth earlier, and as I said, most of their songs, a lot of their songs are in E flat, but there have been songs noticeably where John made a specific effort to use a different tuning and totally changed the sound of the song. Dark City from them is a good example of one. The back half of that song, because of the tuning that's used, it sounds happy, which that's something you don't really generally associate with Iced Earth, right? And it's very unusual. And then there's another song from them where John specifically used, a tuning to suggest a happier, and not the usual minor chord melody, but rather like a more uplifting major chord melody, to change the tonal impact of the song. And I think it was Come What May, which was the conclusion to their big Something Wicked trilogy, which really saw the sort of Antichrist character. He was not, Sed Abomine was not really the Antichrist, so to speak. He took on that mantle, in terms of his mythology, I guess you could say. But at the end, you saw him relenting and saying, maybe I don't want to destroy humanity, and it's a really interesting song. But I think, to bring it back to Vektor, that tuning plays such a major impact in everything that they do, and I think this song just really highlights it. Maybe not so much as some of their other songs, and I think ultimately, when I look at their whole catalog, when I was making a song suggestion for Vin and Sori for Vektor, I was very, very, very torn about which song to pick. I at several points I was positive I wanted to do Forest of Legend, and then ultimately changed to Recharging the Void, because I felt that in the end it really came down to the vocal thing, and I think I was right on that, because one of the things that they noted even in Recharging the Void was is that vocally at first they were like, you know, and I think they kind of warmed up to it. It's a long song. They kind of warmed up to it by the end, but I think if you, because Forest of Legend does have some of the high screams, so I think if you couple that, you might have a little bit less of. I think they still would really like Forest of Legend, and I think after now that they have heard Recharging the Void, I think that Force of Legend may actually be a song that they actually like more. I like it a little bit more than Recharging the Void. And I think the reason why this song is not good as an early song for the band also really highlights the fact that this is a really great song to go back and listen to like we did here. Because I noticed things about the song that I never really had looked at before, and that actually brings me to the last thing I want to do here real quick is to dive into the lyrics on this one. So the first verse, it's a long way to reality from the mind's extremities, deep in the core of the subconscious realm lies a shrouded being cowering, a suspended entity in darkness. Capsule in crystal state, a soft glowing green and black, amoebic dark invading. That's the chorus actually. I think is suspended entity in darkness. No, I'm sorry. The chorus is later on. So that's like the first. He repeats that part actually towards the end, if I remember correctly, about suspended entity in darkness, encapsulated in crystalline state, but with some changes to the lyrics, I think. Shrouded being cowering, a suspended entity in darkness, encapsulated in a crystalline state. Soft, slowing green and black, maybe dark invading. Scampering through a silent chasm, on the other side beams a ray of light. The beacon becomes obscured as the walls structuralize. Cubiform crystallization, a daunted hero falls to his knees. A piece of eternity from within, condemned to memory. So, Outer Isolation, the song Outer Isolation was actually a precursor to Terminal Redux. It's the same character. And I wonder, but that was Outer Isolation, the song. I wonder, though, if the hero, the daunted hero that's spoken of here is the same character. A piece of eternity from within, condemned to memory. Interesting. And so then the chorus continues, one side is lost, while the other is gained. Will the two ever be one in the same, a suspended entity in darkness, encapsulated in a crystalline state? Okay, so that actually is the chorus. It's just that he brings it into the beginning of the first verse. Suspended entity in darkness, encapsulated in a crystalline state, a soft, glowing green and black, amoebic dark invading. It sounds like you get like a vision of, and I feel like Vektor evokes a lot of atmosphere in their writing. He's very painterly in terms of giving you like this sort of palette of what's happening, and I get the feeling of this like a spaceship hurtling through space, and then he comes upon this black hole or nebula or star or something, and then there's this entity, and and this entity basically crystallizes him and changes him almost like he's like a butterfly or something, like a chrysalis type thing. encapsulated in a crystalline state, a soft glowing green and black, amoebic dark invading. So like it's like it's a um, like a building block like an amoeba, because he's talking about like so not what we would think of as a traditional being, but maybe more of a what we might think of as a thing, like a blob of sentient dark energy, this is dark invading, like almost like it's taking over, and trying to change him, and like it's crystallized him, like almost like trapped him in like this crystalline prison. Retaliating echoes puncturing my sanity. The essence of my being is only a memory. Crippling vices instilled confirm the soul to seclusion, dissonant existence, feelings and thought without resolution. See, this is So I think my suspicion about that was correct. Like that, this entity is, I don't necessarily want to say evil, but definitely has dark intentions, or is and it's seriously screwing with his mind. And when you think about things from a Lovecraftian perspective, this is almost Cthulhu-esque, because Cthulhu is like, it's like that it's just like sanity shattering, stuff. And the essence of my being is only a memory. Like it's supplanting his memories, and crippling vices instilled. Like it's and I guess by crippling vice, that could mean, because he says about dissonant existing feelings, thoughts, without resolution, that could mean depression. That it's instilling depression. This being. Life is liquid when we are young. I love this. This is the part of the song that I love the most, and I love these lines. Life is liquid when we are young. We paint with the colors of the sun. Time solidifies in our brains till we paint with shades of gray. It's fucking brilliant writing. Life is liquid when we are young. And I think really this is more of an abstract idea, where he's saying that, when we're younger, everything is like bright and just like so, vibrant. But as we get older, time solidifies in our brains. We see so much shit, and we see so many terrible things, and we start to see shades of gray. Nothing is like 100% good. Nothing is 100% evil. It's just, there's just gray, and it's also, like, speaking to what I mentioned earlier, depression, because people associate gray with depression. So, actually, this last line really points to that. It says, "All I see are dark clouds over a sunny day. The colorful picture of life solidifies and strips away. Tetrastructural minds, what once was liquid is frozen in time. A cold cubicle cell traps all hope deep inside. Amoebic dark invading." So this entity has basically, you kind of get the sense that this in a way that the entity is trying to just break him down, and it's just like showing him like just this terrible stuff, and it's like all he just sees is darkness, and like it's just depressing. But then it says, a colorful picture of life solidifies and strips away tetrastructural minds. That's the part that I don't understand. So, but then, what was liquid is frozen in time. Oh no, okay, I see what he's saying. Okay, So this actually is a callback to the previous verse where he says, "Life is liquid when we are young. We paint with colors of the sun. Time solidifies in our brains." So this is actually a metaphor that's calling back to a previous metaphor where he's saying about uh, the colorful picture solidifies. Is where he says time solidifies in our brains. So what he's saying is that colorful, bright picture solidifies, and it strips away the creative beauty of our minds. What was once that liquid time when we're young and everything seems so bright is frozen in this dark, cold reality, and it eventually traps all hope. It's a very nihilistic song. Traps all hope deep inside, and then I think that is speaking specifically about depression, where it says amoebic dark invading. And so I don't. This whole song, while it is presented as somewhat of a Lovecraftian sort of space sort of story, I think it's actually really a metaphor in a way for depression, and really a pretty incredible song. I think it's awesome stuff. So that is Tetrastructural Minds. So I'm going to end the video here. I'm going to shoot a couple more videos probably over the next couple of days because I got a couple of days off, and if I can find some good songs that I think are going to be good ones to break down. But I did want to do Vector. I'll probably do some newer songs to me for the next couple. This was less of a reaction and more of a breakdown. But as I mentioned before in the channel intro, this is not really a reaction channel. It's really more of a musical breakdown channel. I mean, I am going to do some reacts for sure. I want to hit something off of the new Skeleton Witch album that I haven't heard yet. So I want to definitely get into that. The new album is really interesting. I did not like it that much. I heard 3 songs. I liked one of them a lot. And then the other 2 I didn't like as much. But I think the reason why I didn't like it is not because it objectively is bad. It's because they've changed their sound drastically and have moved away from thrash and more into black metal. So this is much more of a black metal record from them. So that's probably one of the next ones I'm going to hit. I do want to hit also something from the newer Black Fast record. They're a band that not a lot of people know about, so that's kind of cool to expose people to maybe a band that they haven't ever heard of before. It's very similar to Vector, so there's some similarities there. So I think those 2 bands, certainly look for those. I definitely want to do something from Nea Obliviscaris as well. So I would look for a Nea Obliviscaris song. Not certain which one I'll do. That's one. And then I would like to hit both Neo and Winter Sun because I'm going to be seeing them very, very soon. So both of those bands are, I think, bands that could definitely... I haven't really listened that much to the song Time. So I'm thinking the live version of Time from Sonic Plum Studios will be a good one because I really don't know the song that well. I know Land of Snow and Sorrow, and I know Sons of Winter and Stars, obviously, from Time 1. But I don't know the actual title track all that well. So it'll be cool to go and listen to that one and get into that one a little bit more. So those are probably the first 4 bands that we're going to hit aside from Vector, and which that makes sense because those hit my favorites. If you guys have any suggestions, for what to break down, go ahead and suggest them here. But I'll warn you that stuff that I want to break. I want to look at stuff that's musically relatively complex because that is the focus of the channel. So don't like request Bring Me the Horizon and no offense, Vin, and stuff like that. I'm looking for things that are where I can really dig into the musical side of how the song was composed. And I did a little less of that with this one because I knew the song relatively well, and I think it's actually a fairly straightforward song. But like if I were breaking down Forest of Legend, I could probably talk about that song for like an hour. Although I may have talked about this song for like an hour by the time this video is over. But anyways, so that's it for right now. I will see you guys very soon. Stay metal.